Hello guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Thank you for tuning into the channel. On today's episode, I'm going to make some modern ruins inspired by a post-apocalyptic style theme. These ruins are going to be used for a Frostgrave game, but the theme of it is going to be Thundar the Barbarian. And unless you're a 50-year-old guy, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, it was a Hanna-Barbera Saturday morning cartoon that was on for 2 seasons. And it's basically like a campy sci-fi post-apocalyptic style cartoon. And the bad guys were always wizards. So I thought, why not do a Frostgrave game inspired by this cartoon? So for this section, I made a bunch of modular pieces of ruins inspired by concrete chunks. And for this, I used XPS foam and the bottom of cereal box grade cardboard or toaster pastries. And on this one, I sealed the bottom of it. So in this tutorial, what I'm going to do is go ahead and show everybody how to paint these. Now on this, to keep the cardboard flat, I did little nicks on the cardboard around the perimeter, and especially on the inside of any sort of curve. This is like a little sewing trick. And I also put some glue on the opposite side of the cardboard to keep the terrain piece in the cardboard from warping. What happens with glue, PVA glue, and acrylic is that when it dries, it constricts and shrinks, which will cause your terrain piece to warp and become all sorts of distorted. To construct these terrain pieces, I used the Green Guard XPS insulation foam, 1-inch thickness, and I cut these with the hot foam cutter, as well as some of these I used an X-Acto blade. So you can use any kind of sharp, straight edge tool you've got or a hot foam cutter to get the desired shape. Now, I didn't video this footage of me cutting stuff up, or constructing the terrain pieces, making them, but I do have other videos, which I'll put cards up top, which show you how I like to make things. Here are the colors I think I'm going to go with for my rocks. I've got this, let's see, English ivy green. I've got English ivy green. I've got gray storm, slate gray. Got a couple of those. And then I have the storm cloud gray. And I might be tossing in some of this blue bonnet. And then I have this for a very, very light gray. I have granite gray. Now I might be doing dry brush with this, but I was also thinking of doing dry brush with the antique. Here's the cocoa bean, which I used for this terrain piece. And that's what I'm going to do, is paint these up. First color I'm going to go in with is this blue bonnet, which I have a feeling is going to be too bright. Let's take a look. Yeah. I think it looks pretty cool. It's not realistic, but I'm not really going for a realistic look. And if you see what I'm doing over here for my dry brushes, I just take, and if I have too much paint, I'll put that on there first before hitting this. I hope everybody can see this. So yeah, it's kind of like a blue-gray, and I am fine with that. So I'm going to do that to at least one rock in each of these. Gray storm. We'll try gray storm. A little bit of a darker gray. Alrighty, so here's where we're at right now with the colors. You can see the blue is really standing out now when it's next to the gray. It kind of looks like it's glowing, which I think is kind of cool. That'd be a good technique for the Underdark stuff. Here's the other ones. So the nice thing about working with in multiples is that while one dries, you can go on to the next one. Get a lot done. So that's a pretty cool technique. And that's where I'm at so far. So thus far, I've used this blue bonnet, which is kind of like a robin's egg blue, and then this gray, which I don't know where the gray is. Oh, here's the gray. And I used this gray storm, which is kind of it's got a little green in there. That sticker is not the best, but there's what it looks like. Ta-da! So I think what I'm going to do now is spot color. So the next thing I'm going to do is spot color a couple of these rocks like I did with that blue. And I'm going to try this English navy green and see how this turns out. It's kind of like a pucy green. And once again, I'm just using that same brush. I'm being a real lazy painter. And we'll see how that looks. A couple of rocks. I think it's just going to add a little green, nice green texture to something. So let me find a small tester rock. So here, we'll try this one. Try to find the best spot. There we go. Didn't really do a whole lot, but it did add a little bit of just a little coloring to it. So I'm going to take this and just do spots here and there to break up. The reason why I'm doing this is to break up the coloring. I'm not going to do a whole brick in this. I don't think I want to do that. So just breaking up this color once again with the slight variation of what's already on there. And if you cannot see in the color spectrum of these colors, I am sorry. Not even some primer or anything. So I'm just gonna see what I'm doing is I'm just taking my brush and dabbing around. So right now on these rocks that I painted right so far, if we're not including the blue one, there are technically 3 different colors. We've got the black, the gray that's been blended out, and then we've got this green now. So this piece would be good to go as far as I'm concerned with the terrain. So, okay. It's got some green on it. This one needs some of the green touches. And you don't have to go super crazy with this if you don't want to. You can go as light. You don't even have to do this stuff if you don't want to, but I think it looks good when you add a little more detail like this. It just adds another variation to the rock style, and it ends up looking pretty cool, in my opinion, when you have a lot of varieties of colors going on. Take some looks and see where we can dab some of this. Just get a little different colors going on here, Linda. New colors going on here, Linda. I think I got one more to go. some of the greens in there. And there we go. I think we're good to go with that one. So here's where we got with our pieces now. Got that green color added to it, which I think is going to be nice. A little tech green, little something, something. Okay. Alrighty, so now we've got to take care of the brown areas. And I'm going to start off, what color do I want to start off with? With my burnt umber. Right there. And I'm going to do little patches. So yeah, here's where we're at right now with all of our rocks. You can see the blue ones are pretty cool. I think that'd be really cool for Underdark. I may have to save that idea. Squirrel it away in the head. But here we go. There's all the pieces. And I'm going to let that dry for a hot minute. Take a break, let this dry for a minute, and then come back and add some more colors. And then we'll do some dry brushing. But there you go, that's where we're at. Looking pretty good, I think. Alrighty, and the next step is to go ahead and do a little bit of dry brushing on the edges, which I went ahead and did this on the one. Here's we can compare and contrast. This is without dry brush, and this is with the dry brush. And for that, I'm using this cheap dollar store brush that the hairs make me nervous. I don't know where they're from. I would not be surprised if it's like a horse or human, who knows. Anyway, I'm not gonna try and think about it. So anyway, so what I do for that is I take my slate gray color. This is just a cheap acrylic paint. Slate gray. Dip my brush in the cap and then take off any extras, and like I like to do it on my hand too. And then just take the brush and see how it just starts picking up texture and edges and whatnot. And it also, what I try and do is take it all over all the rock pieces, so it kind of unifies everything, and it tones down that green that we just put on there. It tones down the green that we just put on there, and just ties, I think it ties everything together. It's also calming down the blue that I put on that one rock, so it's not so underdark. In some spots I get too much paint on there, and that's okay, because we don't want all the rocks to be exactly the same. Okay, so put a little on there, and then I'm going to try and start tapping some of these edges. Very lightly, just tapping the edges. You can take it into the piece or out of the piece, your call. Taking it in on some of these. And what's that doing is that is separating the edges a little more, giving it that kind of cut rock feel. Whoops, I'm a little crazy there. Whoops. Let's go ahead and do some dry brush and magicry pieces and get them to pop. I do love dry brushing, I have to say. So there we go, we're getting a nice like cement kind of effect Oops, there's a lot of paint right there. I gotta get rid of it. Diffuse, diffuse, diffuse. Okay. So now I'm gonna go in and hit these edges. And I think that's starting to look pretty interesting. Starts to look like, to me, it's starting to look like chipped rock. There we go. Turned the XPS foam into some nice rock terrain. So I'm going to go ahead and do these on all the rocks, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to do finish up on that. Let's take a look at where we are with our pieces. So, nice little, you can see, starting to take shape. And all we gotta do is finish the ground bits. And I think I'm gonna add some flocking to these. Just because I think it'll look nice. Alrighty. So I've got my same old brush and it's kind of dry from doing dry brushing. So I think I'm gonna add a little bit, is this the ripe tomato? Yeah. I'm gonna add a little bit of ripe tomato to the base. And I might even be adding some yellow, who knows? But just little dabs here and there. I just want to break up some of the monotony of these two colors. Orange in there. We'll start with black base coat, and then we went to burnt umber, and then now we just went to this ripe tomato, which I have been working a lot of. And I think I'm going to do a little bit of this crazy yellow, just to add a little more variety. And I'm going to go real light with it, and I'm just going to mix, same brush, I'm just going to mix it in there. And I want to go real light with it and see what happens. So I'm just doing a little itty bitty bit of this because it's just another little bit of variety. piece. And I will be dry brushing again. We're going to be dry brushing on stuff, so it may look a little crazy now, but trust. Okay, so you can see little bits of yellow and lighter colors. That is the yellow that I'm mixing in here. And then now I'm going to go clean this brush off, and we're going to do dry brushing. A little showcase of where our progress is so far. I think these are turning out pretty cool. I really wasn't sure what colors I was going to go with, and then I kept seeing something kind of like this in my head, so went with it. I think they're looking pretty good. Next we're going to do is a little bit of a dry brush. I found some cheap little brushes. This would also make a really good dry brush, but I think it's too big maybe. And I don't know, I might be able to hit everything. I just think I'd have a little more control with this one, with this brush. Or, because I think this one might be too big. But what I look for in a dry brush is I like the bristles to be nice and soft, and this is actually a perfect dry brush. Loose powder brush for your face. For your face. One thing I'd like to pass along from this tutorial is that using a loose powder makeup brush, which folks use on their face to set any sort of liquid makeup like a foundation or some under eye cover or some grease paint, is a beautiful tool to use for dry brushing. And I don't really use it in this tutorial, but I wanted to pass that information along. And please ask your significant other for permission first before grabbing their favorite makeup brushes, because these things can get expensive. So I recommend just going and buying a cheap one rather than investing $70 to $90 in a horsehair brush. And yes, some of those brushes do go up that high in prices. So I think I'm going to go in with the this is a dollar store brush. And I'm going to go in with what I've been enjoying highlighting tonight, which is the territorial beige. I'm going to soak it all in there. Can't really tell that it's in there, but it is. And then I take some of it off. And I like to put it on my skin so I can get an idea of how wet it is and what's going on. And then dry brush it on. Okay, so I'm going to dip it in there, get it all on my brush. This is a really liquidy paint. One thing I've noticed with these cheap craft paints is that they are not really super consistent with. Sometimes they're thick, sometimes they're thin. There we go. Get that all off best I can, and then toss it on there. You know what, I'm not really seeing much. Excuse me. Oh my god, am I finished? I believe so. So here we go with our pieces with our last bit of dry brush on there. Pulls all the different colors and textures together, which I think turned out looking pretty nice. So you can see there's all sorts of different little variations of the colors going on with the ground, as well as with the rock, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. And there you go. So, ta-da, these are considered finished. I may put on some flock and whatnot, but for now, these are finito.